35, Sean Diddy Combs has been acquitted of the most serious federal charges against him, sex trafficking and racketeering. He was found guilty of transporting prostitutes across state lines. The disgraced music mogul still faces up to 20 years in prison, but his partial acquittal has sparked outrage from some advocates for sexual abuse and human trafficking survivors. We welcome to Mornings on 2 Sharan Dhanoa, director of the South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking. You're a human rights attorney. You're working with survivors. What message did you hear in that mixed verdict?
You know, I think big cases like this are so important, not just for the survivors who are part of the actual case, but any survivors of sexual violence or exploitation. And so few have the opportunity to even see their abusers or their exploiters being held to account. So we know that this verdict has a lot of impact on survivors everywhere. What I'm taking from it is that there have been that he was found guilty of 2 charges and could face up to 20 years in prison. And so for us, that's a step forward. The other step forward is that we've historically seen survivors being criminalized. So at least in this case, we're seeing survivors being seen as that and being heard as survivors, and the harms that occurred to them are being validated in some spaces. But it is difficult to see that the more punitive charges were not held to account.
Some of the testimony was brutal, even for those who have no direct relationship with some of the horrors that were described. I imagine the people you work with likely turned it off or had to turn away at some point. How did they absorb it?
I mean, I can't speak directly for how every survivor obviously absorbs that situation, but yeah, it can be very traumatizing. I think it was incredibly brave of both survivors to come forward and they really painted the picture of what it looks like in situations of sexual exploitation and trafficking, which is you really see layers of coercion, psychological manipulation. There was financial manipulation that you see there. And they really helped provide that picture of how somebody who is an adult may stay in a situation very similar to what we see with domestic violence as well. There's so much coercion and control. And in this particular case, we have that added layer of wealth and celebrity that really ends up controlling individuals, not just the victims who testified, but the employees who are also part of all of these situations of exploitation.
Is it difficult, and I'll think back to when we were covering the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein, a lot of people initially said, you know, these actors who are speaking up saying he did horrific things, they're photographed with him. They have, you know, their arms around him. They look happy. Some people can't square that with having been attacked. Is that an issue you saw playing out a little bit in this trial?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always very difficult in cases like this when people already have made up, they have impressions about celebrity and they idolize individuals. It's really difficult for them to then make sense of these kind of charges when we know that with domestic violence situations, with situations of sex trafficking, you're not part of that everyday interaction with those individuals. You don't know how they behave behind the scenes. We got a glimpse with some of the text messages and his responses to victims when they were saying, I'm feeling humiliated, I'm feeling hurt. And I also want to point out that humiliation, that is a coercive tactic. You know, exploiters use that because they can isolate somebody, make them feel like they have no value. But it is really hard to overcome that then public perception because they've idolized somebody for so long.
Your final words on a trial that was very closely watched, very detailed. What would you like to say to people who essentially don't have as much experience and knowledge as you do?
Well, I really hope that this trial encourages individuals to learn more about sex trafficking. There's great resources out there. One I recommend is the lifestory.org, which really helps paint a picture from survivors directly of what trafficking looks like and how we might be able to impact the issue. Also, to know the human trafficking hotline, 888-3737-888. Reach out for help. There are other forms of justice. If you can't get it met within the criminal justice system, there are other ways to heal. And so we really want to just emphasize that there are services that are available. There are individuals who will believe you and will validate you and help help you recover and heal in your journey.
Okay, and you are one of them. I appreciate your time and your expertise, and for coming up here down from the South Bay this morning. Thank you again. All right, Sharan Dhanoa. Again, the National Human Trafficking Hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you or someone you know needs help, the number's on your screen, 888-373-7888. You can speak with a specially trained anti-trafficking hotline advocate. We'll note there is support in more than 200 languages.